the next topic is about digestive system. So digestive system, the main function of that is for digestion and absorption. So the first one is digestion, in which it is the process of breaking down food into small molecules, which then being absorbed, and that is absorption of nutrients from the food that we eat. Next is, of course, we have two types of digestion. The first one is mechanical digestion, and the second one is chemical digestion. So what is mechanical digestion? So in mechanical digestion, it happens when there is a change in the physical form of the food, specifically with the help of our oral cavity or the mouth. While chemical digestion changes the chemical composition of the food with the aid of the different digestive enzymes. So let us discuss about digestion, where it begins. So digestion begins in, of course, the mouth or the oral cavity. So in our mouth, so we have there our teeth, of course, for cutting, tearing, crushing, and grinding food. And then the salivary glands produces saliva in order for us to soften the food that we eat. So we have the different salivary glands in our oral cavity. So we have first the parative gland. So it is found beneath the cheeks. Ayan. So ito yun. And the second one is the submaxillary or the submandibular gland. So it's below the jawbone. So ito yung ating jawbone. And this is the submandibular or submaxillary gland. And then the other one is sublingual gland. So it is below the tongue. So ito yung tongue, and this is the sublingual gland. So those are the salivary glands that, of course, produce saliva. So the saliva moistens the food and softens the food that we eat, and it contains an enzyme which is known as the ptyalin or salivary amylase. So the ptyalin begins the digestion of the starch. So the starch, such as the rice, by breaking it into smaller polysaccharides or the chain of sugar molecules. And then, after that, the tongue aids in mixing the bolus. So we call the food, the smashed food, softened food, as the bolus. And the bolus is pushed by the tongue to the pharynx and to the epiglottis. So, kagaya nung diniscuss ko sa respiratory system, epiglottis helps in separating the food that we eat and the air that we breathe. Ayan. So, yung food, so mapupunta siya sa esophagus, while the air, doon naman siya sa trachea. Okay. So, the next one, the next pathway is, after the epiglottis, ayan. So, it will go to the esophagus. So, the bolus will go to the esophagus. It is about 25 centimeters long or 10 inches long. And it is made up of smooth muscles. So, this smooth muscle contracts, and we call that movement as peristalsis. In order for the bolus or the food that we eat to go down, ayan, it creates a contraction of muscle known as peristalsis. And then, this contraction make it possible to squeeze and to propel food and liquid slowly down to the esophagus and into the stomach. So, as the food approaches our stomach, there is what we know as the cardiac sphincter. So, it is the entrance. So, ito yon. So, the cardiac sphincter. It's the boundary between the esophagus and the stomach. So, it's a ring-like valve at the junction of the esophagus and the stomach. So, when the food is already there sa cardiac sphincter, it will relax in order to allow the food to enter through the stomach. So, the stomach here is a J-shaped muscle, and it has inner folds known as the ragae. So, ito yun. Ragae. So, ito yung inner folds niya. So, discuss ko muna itong parts ng stomach. So, yung curve niya dito, pataas, it's known as the fundus. And then, we have here the greater curvature. And at the end, we have what we known as the pylorus. Sa taas, fundus. Sa baba naman is pylorus. Okay. So, the stomach acts as a blender or a mixer. So, it churns and grinds the food, the bolus rather, into smaller pieces. So, this function is made possible through peristalsis of its strong muscles. So, itong inner folds na yan, those are muscles. And still, peristalsis is being done here. And in order to digest the food, so the food is mixed with the gastric juices. And the gastric juices contain HCl. So, diba, HCl means hydrochloric acid. And other enzymes. Okay, so the hydrochloric acid helps break down food and kill bacteria that might be in the food that we ate. Next is the major enzyme of the stomach. We have here also the pepsin. So the pepsin converts the proteins from the food into peptides. So peptides are a chain of amino acids. The stomach also produces mucus that lubricates the food and protects the gastric lining from the strong digestive juices. And then, about 4 hours siya dyan, yung bolus na yun, na dinadigest ng stomach natin. So, the food becomes a thoroughly mixed liquid known as the chyme. So, from food or the bolus, it became a mixed liquid or chyme. So, this chyme, so kapag tayo nagwa-vomit, yung liquid na maasim na natitikman natin or nandun na liquid is already the chyme. So, it passes through a valve. So, after niyang maging chyme, it passes through a valve. So, another valve. If the entrance, we have here the cardiac sphincter. Dito naman, meron tayong pyloric sphincter. So, the chyme will go through the pyloric sphincter in order to enter the small intestine. Okay, so as the chyme enters the small intestine, so the small intestine is 20 feet long when stretched. Okay, and then it is made up of 3 parts. So, the first one, so nakita natin kanina dun sa illustration, meron nakalagay dun na duodenum. So, the first part is the duodenum. Ito siya. After the pyloric sphincter, it enters the duodenum, which is 10 inches long. And it absorbs digestive juices from the accessory parts like pancreas and the liver. And then, after that, we also have here the jejunum. After niya sa duodenum, didiretso na siya sa jejunum, which is 8 feet long. And then, go to the ileum, which is 12 feet long. So, what happens in the jejunum and ileum? So, ganun siya kahaba. While the chyme is still breaking down into smaller pieces pa. So, mas ina-absorb na natin yung nutrients through the jejunum and the ileum. Okay. So, inside the intestine, so in the inner wall of intestine, we have what we call as the mucosa. So this secretes enzymes that acts on the food. This mucosa, it's either yung mga enzyme na sinisecrete niya by the gastric glands, pepsin, and the gastric lipase. Also, we have lactase, maltase, sucrase, and nuclease. So, meron din tayong aminopeptidase. So, maraming enzyme na sinisecrete yung mucosa. And then, in the lining of our small intestine, we have tiny projections known as the villi. And these villi are storage of blood vessels and the lymph vessels. So, not storage rather, it is composed of blood vessels and lymph vessels, yung villi. And then, doon sa villi, meron pa ulit mas maliliit na projections known as the microvilli. So, in the microvilli, nandoon na yung tiniest blood vessel, which we know already as the capillaries. So, so that the capillaries will absorb the nutrients and it will add those nutrients to the blood. Okay. So, next na, after the small intestine, so pagkatapos dumaan kay duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, it will now go to the large intestine. So, lahat ng hindi na-absorb na nutrients at hindi na-digest na food ay pumupunta kay large intestine. It is also known as the colon and it has a larger diameter than the small intestine and it is about 5 feet long. Again, undigested food goes to the colon and it absorbs more water. Okay, when the water is absorbed, syempre, nagiging dry, nagiging waste. It becomes harder and harder until it becomes solid. So, yung solid na yon yung feces natin, okay, or the waste. And then, eventually, that waste, the large intestine pushes the waste to the rectum. And the solid waste stays in the rectum until it is excreted as feces through the anus. Okay? So, that is the function of large intestine, mainly to absorb water and to collect the undigested food. Next, kaya siya colon cancer kasi yung mga undigested food na hindi nalalabas, dumidikit siya sa colon. Okay? And then, ayun, eventually, nagiging carcinogenic na siya. Another one that we have in the colon is the appendix. So, appendix is considered to be a vestigial organ. When we say vestigial organ, it does not have a function. Wala siyang specific function. And if it is taken out of the body, okay lang. We can still live without the appendix. So, that's why it's known as a vestigial organ. It is located at the right side of the colon. Okay, so let's look here in the anatomy of the colon. So, it is named based on the direction. Ayan. So, after natin sa ileum, so pagtapos dito sa ileum, we have here the ascending colon. Ascending kasi pataas siya. Okay? So, we have also here the appendix. Ito yun. Ascending colon. And then the transverse colon. So, transverse is horizontally. So, papunta doon. And then descending colon, pababa. And then a slight curve, which is known as the sigmoid colon. And then the rectum and the anus. Next is the other digestive organs. So, for the other digestive organs, we have the liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas. Okay, so why are they called as other digestive organs or accessory organs? Part pa rin naman sila ng digestive system, but then they are not part of the digestive tract. track meaning dinadaanan ng food. Okay, or the pathway of food. But then, these three organs, they have important function such as producing or storing enzymes and chemicals that helps us or helps the other organs to break down food. Okay, so the liver is the largest gland in the body, and then it stores vitamins and sugar in the form of glycogen. It also produces greenish substance, watery green substance known as the bile. And then the bile goes via hepatic duct and cystic duct. So we have here the hepatic duct, the right and the left. So ito yung liver. It produces the bile. And then it goes to the right and left hepatic duct and the cystic duct. And then it stores in the gallbladder. Kaya tinawag yung gallbladder na bile storage. Okay? Nandyan yung bile kapag hindi tayo kumakain. So, nakastore lang dyan. But then, when there is already food in the stomach, or meron ng kailangang i-digest, so, it nag-squeeze yung gallbladder in order to produce the stored bile. Okay? And then, it goes to the common bile duct. Ito. And diretso na siya yung bile doon sa duodenum of the small intestine. And then the bile mixes with the fats in food. And it is important to note that the bile is not an enzyme. It does not alter chemical composition of the food. Rather, it acts as an emulsifier. Pag sinabing emulsifier, parang nakalagay dito, it is much like detergents that dissolve grease from a frying pan. So, yung taga-tunaw din ito. Okay, ng mga fats. So, yun yung bile. Next, we have here the pancreas. So, what is the function of the pancreas? So, the pancreas produces a juice that contains enzymes to break down carbohydrates, fats, and protein in food. So, these enzymes are secreted to the duodenum through the pancreatic duct. So, the pancreas is located, behind the stomach. So, diba, nasa unahan yung stomach, tapos diba, nandun yung pyloric sphincter dito. Yan. Ang kakabit nitong duodenum, diba, yung pyloric sphincter natin. So, nandito sa unahan yung stomach. Nasa likod si pancreas, si gallbladder, tapos si liver. Okay, so that is the digestive system.